This is your first video about the proportional relationships pertaining to row 1. When setting up a proportion, which is what we're talking about, first decide what 2 units you're comparing. This is miles to minutes, miles to hours, degrees to hours, etc. It could be anything. Write the units as a ratio. Remember, in our last unit, a ratio is what we were talking about. We're talking about a rational number. So in this example, you just traveled 40 miles in 30 minutes. How far will you travel in 45 minutes? The 2 units being compared are miles and minutes. The ratio will be miles as my numerator and minutes as my denominator. Look at the information you have left and identify what information is missing. So back to our example, you just traveled 40 miles in 30 minutes. How will you travel in 45 minutes? What are you trying to find? How far? Or basically the distance traveled in 45 minutes. How many miles? How far? So we're going to set up our proportion using what we know and what we're missing. I will always set up my units proportion so that everything in my numerator had better be miles. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up. Miles and miles, minutes and minutes. So I never get anything switched. So I am going 40 miles in 30 minutes. I need to figure out how far I'm going to go in 45 minutes, so I know the 45 needs to go in my denominator so it lines up with my units. I want to know how far I went, so I'm going to put an X there to denote the value I'm looking for. To solve the proportion, you cross multiply and divide. So I'm going to cross multiply 30 times X and get 30X. 45 times 40, 16, 17, 18, gives me 1800, and I want to get X by itself. So I want to divide by the coefficient, that 30, and 30 divided by 30 is going to cancel out to give me 1. So I have 1X equals, these zeros cancel out, 3 goes into 18 6 times with that 0 left over. So that tells me I traveled 60 miles. And that's it. Set up your proportion. Units need to be the same. Cross multiply, divide by the number by X. It has to be that number because we need to get X by itself. And boom, there's your answer. So you have another example set up. I have my proportion right here. X equals 20 over 4 equals 16. I'm going to cross multiply. 16 times X, 16X, 4 times 20 gives me 20. Divide both sides by 16. That 16 should cancel out and X equals 5. Done. So at this moment, we are going to do our practice with our guided practice. So if you want to pause this moment and give it a shot yourself and then come back and check your answers. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I hope you paused and gave this a shot. Number 1 is saying 12 gallons of gas costs $30. How much will it cost to get an additional 4 gallons of gas? So if I'm going an additional 4 gallons on top of the 12, I am actually looking for 16 gallons. So which 2 units are we comparing? We are comparing gallons to gas. Write it as its own ratio. Boom. Gallons over gas. Write another ratio with the information from the problem. Set this ratio equal to the ratio from above. So we're saying 12 gallons for 30 gallons of gas to money. Which makes sense because we're doing gallons to $30. So $30 We are going for 16 gallons. I know that 12 gallons is my numerator, so that 16 needs to go up there. I am looking for how much money. What are you looking for? I think I just answered that. How much money? Set up the third ratio with X, which we set up here anyway. Set this ratio equal to the proportion above. We have that set up here. I just kind of jumped into it. Now cross multiply and solve. So I'm going to rewrite this. 12 gallons of gas to $30, 16 gallons of gas to X. I'm always going to cross multiply. 12 times X is 12X. I'm going to do 16 times 30 over to this side. 6 times 3 is 18. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 480. I want to get X by itself, so I'm always going to divide by that number. And 12 goes into 480. Remember, that's my numerator. It always goes in my house. 12 goes into 48 4 times, which gives me a remainder of 0. So it is going to cost us $40. And that's it. When you set up your proportion, cross multiply, solve. Boom, done. All right, so example 2, Blair can make 6 dozen cupcakes in 2 hours. So I've automatically identified my 2 units, the amount of cupcakes and the amount of time. How many dozen cupcakes is she gonna make if she has 4.5 hours to bake today? Determine which 2 units. I've already found them. Number of cupcakes and time, specifically in hours. Write another ratio with the information from the problem. Set this ratio equal to the ratio of above. So we have the number of cupcakes as my numerator and time as my denominator. We are looking for how many cupcakes in 4.5 hours. So now we are going to set up a third ratio with X, 6 cupcakes, or 6 dozen, to 2 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this, since I know 6 dozen and a dozen is 12, I'm going to say 12 times 6, which means she actually makes 72 cupcakes in 2 hours. We need to know how many cupcakes in 4.5 hours. I'm going to cross multiply and rock and roll. So I have 2 times X is 2X. I'm going to say 75 times 4.5 gives me 25, 35, 36, 37, 20, 28, 29, 30, 3. I have a decimal here. Dividing both sides by 2 because I always want to get rid of that number next to X. I need to figure out how many times 2 goes into 337. So I'm going to do that over here because I have room. 2 goes into 3 once. 2 goes into 13 6 times. 2 goes into 17. 2 times 8 is 16. Oh, running out of room. Draw the decimal up there. 2 goes into 15. 7 times is going to give me 14. Gives me 1. I'm going to bring that 0 here, and I know 2 goes into 10 5 times. So she makes 168 3/4 of a cupcake. That is what she can project to make. So in real time, in real world, I would say that she can expect to make 168 cupcakes because nobody's going to want that 3/4 of a cupcake. So I'm going to put this in real world time. If we were to know how many dozen cupcakes, because that's, again, what we're looking for. How many dozen cupcakes? She can make 168, so we need to figure out how many dozen cupcakes that is. So I'm going to go on the back because I don't have a lot of room. So I have 168, and I'm going to divide it into 12. So she can make a little over 14 dozen cupcakes. And that's your lesson. So I would like you to take this time to work on your proportional relationships practice. The first page, you are solving for these variables. And then these guys, please feel free to come up and we can work on number 4 together. And that way you can do 5 and 6. You can come up and we can check it. I have a code for the key for all of these. If you prefer to work and then check your answer as you go, let me know. I can definitely give you the Google URL to get you that answer. Just make sure that your answers are in your own words and you're not copying what I'm giving you, because that's not going to be what I'm looking for. Right, so then we can do the first one together on this page, and then you can go ahead and knock that paper out. We can again do the problems here. If you want to do one of the word problems, I will let you pick whichever one you want to do, and then you're responsible for the other ones. And lastly, we have some real world applications of proportions. So as soon as you get all of your practice done and you have self-checked, then I want you to use that time to ask any questions, review anything that you need to review, and once you've got all that done, then you move on to the next box. Thanks. Bye.